Kung Fu Panda 4 is a movie that did not really need to exist. The franchise had a pretty conclusive ending with the third installment, but of course, in the current entertainment landscape we find ourselves in, studios are fiending for sequels and reboots more than Michael Bay is fiending for explosions and American flags. So now we have a fourth Kung Fu Panda movie. While I certainly was not expecting much from this film, I at least had hopes that it would be a somewhat worthy inclusion to the franchise, and although this film was not terrible by any means, I definitely found it underwhelming and mediocre at best. So allow me to explain why. By the way, I'm going to do a non-spoiler review for this video, but I plan on making another video soon going much more into depth into why this movie was mediocre and how it could have been much better. So be sure to subscribe and turn on that bell to stay notified for when that video drops. Anywho, welcome to Ghost or Toast, where I, Ghost Toast, your ghost host, use my knowledge as a film major to let y'all know if a movie is ghost, which is good, or toast, which is bad. I have quite a bit to say for this review, so let's get straight into the positives I had with this movie, and then I'll cover some of the things that I didn't really like with this movie. As always, the animation from DreamWorks is amazing in this film, with strong colors, smooth character movement, and nice attention to detail. I really enjoyed the designs of the new characters like Zen and the There are some moments of stylized colors and animation and lighting changes that I found very visually appealing, and overall, visually, I thought that the animation team did a really solid job with this movie. Thumbs up all around. The cinematography and lighting in this film were also great. No complaints there, and the music was definitely one of the strongest aspects of the film. Now, in terms of the action, I thought that the action in this movie was excellent when it happened, and I'll get more into that in a bit, but basically the fight scenes were up to par with most of the other fights in the series, but they usually just did not last very long. However, giving credit where credit is due, the choreography was exciting and did an excellent job incorporating the different shapes, sizes, and abilities of each combatant to make for unique and gripping action sequences, which is very important in my opinion. A very important thing to make sure you nail when you are making a film for a franchise known for its action scenes. So Kung Fu Panda 4 did not drop the ball on the action front. Additionally, I surprisingly did not find Awkwafina to be super annoying in this film. So that actually caught me off guard a bit, especially after seeing her performances in Shang-Chi and The Little Mermaid. But yeah, I guess her not being super annoying is a positive in my book. And dare I even say that I found her character Zen fairly enjoyable at times. Finally, I was genuinely interested and excited for certain aspects of Kung Fu Panda 4's premise. I thought that there was a lot of promise in certain elements, like I think the fact that Po has to learn to give up something that he has grown to love and feel comfort in, which is his position as the Dragon Warrior, is an interesting problem for him to face that could lead to some really good character growth. Or the basic idea behind the bad guy for this film, the Chameleon, someone who can shapeshift and steal kung fu power. I think that there's great potential there. She could definitely work as a villain, but ultimately I think that this movie just did not execute these good concepts in a compelling way. And that brings us to what I'm sure many of you are wondering about, the negatives I had with this movie. Perhaps the single biggest issue with this film is the pacing. Good lord, this movie moves at breakneck speed, and it completely ruins any chance the main two characters, Po and Zen, had at forming a genuine, believable friendship, which is sort of the majority of what the film is supposed to be carried by. Like, the dynamic between these two is what carries a large portion of the film, and that kind of falls flat because of the poor pacing. The poor pacing also makes emotional moments not feel like they really have the kind of weight or impact that they're supposed to have. It forces rushed, basic, bare bones character development, and makes the story feel like it's a fever dream at some points. The writers try to fit in so many different jokes and quips, most of which do not land in my opinion, and it sort of drowns out the few good emotional moments that I actually enjoyed from the film. The speed of the story also kills any kind of meaningful intrigue we can get from the new setting. The movie introduces this new location, and it looks really interesting, full of life, and if the film took the time to develop the city and give it lore and character, then I really think that it could have been a fascinating addition to the world of Kung Fu Panda. Yet the breakneck speed leaves us with no time to explore the city, learn more about it or its inhabitants, and that unfortunately relegates this potentially interesting location to a generic city that just exists for the movie to take place in. Also, there is this B-plot where Po's two dads are working together to follow him and make sure he is okay, but it really just takes up screen time that could have been better spent elsewhere and hardly adds anything of substance to the film. They're just there for mostly comic relief, but their scenes are sort of just haphazardly thrown into the narrative, and the way that those scenes exist in the film feels much more like it's a part of some bad writing for a Kung Fu Panda TV show than a legitimate sequel to the franchise. Oh, and the ending of the film also really suffers from the poor pacing issues. I won't get too much into it to avoid spoilers, but yeah, it feels lackluster and shallow and cheap, and all of that is due to the whack pacing of this film. A fast-paced story can work, but this one just did not. And in my opinion, the pacing really held this film back from fleshing out some important details and providing more substance under the shallow, formulaic story. Another huge problem with this movie is the characters. Established characters like Shifu, Po, and Lord Chen or General Kai all feel like shallower shells of themselves for a variety of reasons. Po seems to be missing the character development he underwent in the previous films. Chen and Kai don't even get to speak in this film, and darn it, the Furious freaking Five don't even show up until the credits. And on top of that, they didn't even bother to hire their voice actors, so they're just silent the entire time. I don't know, I guess just half the characters from the previous movies just all turned into monks and took an oath of silence, or acted like they were characters from Super Smash Bros. Brawl's Subspace Emissaries cutscenes, because they just all refused to speak for some reason, and it's painfully noticeable in the film. The lack of dialogue from certain characters or the lack of continuity from previous films for others makes all the characters here feel off, less genuine or deep or complex than they did before. And that regression inherently makes the film less interesting. Zen was formulaic, but she was okay enough, in my opinion. I didn't really have an issue with her, but sheesh, dude. The Chameleon has some problems that I will for sure get more into with my in-depth review. But for now, I'll just leave it at, yeah, she has some pretty big issues with her character. And since I am on the topic of the Chameleon, I might as well talk about another issue revolving around mostly her. Plot holes and contrivances in this story. Where to even begin? Very minor spoiler here, but yeah, basically the whole motivation for the villain stems from her wanting to learn Kung Fu, but no masters would teach her because she was apparently too small. Even though Mantis and Shifu exist in this universe, did the writers just forget that? It's such a petty motivation too. This is legit the type of villain origin story you would expect from a Saturday morning cartoon like G.I. Joe. Another one is that Po's staff has super strong magical powers, and he never once uses it against the Chameleon in their final fight, but who use it in a random bar fight against third-rate rapscallions. Another thing with his staff too is it can apparently only work if he freely gives it to someone, but that just seemed like a really random and dumb contrivance to force the plot to happen. Same thing with the whole Dragon Warrior successor thing. That whole thing just comes out of nowhere for no good reason, and again, it just is there to make the plot happen. Like I said, I don't necessarily dislike the idea of Po having to grow and move on from being the Dragon Warrior, but at least put some effort into coming up with a logical reason for why that has to happen, instead of basically having Shifu say, Po, the plot needs you to choose the next Dragon Warrior, so DreamWorks can make another movie and earn tons of money. So, be the spiritual peace leader of the valley, or some corny last minute BS position that I pulled out of my cheeks. Like, this movie just relied so heavily on plot conveniences that it felt like a lazy first draft script most of the time, and that's far from the kind of quality you would expect to see from a sequel of such a rich and storied franchise. I told you I'd be circling back to this, and now here I am. The action sequences in this movie were great. Why are they so rare and short though? Basically every fight, except for the last one, wraps up in under a minute. It happens so fast that we don't really get a chance to fully appreciate the good choreography. It's like we're Poe trying to watch the Furious 5 showcase from the first movie through the gate. We know that there's good stuff there, we just get to hardly see any of it. Overall, I thought that Kung Fu Panda 4 was not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, and I found myself actually enjoying it some of the time. I don't want people to get the wrong idea from this review. It's not a terrible film. There are some scenes and concepts that really worked for me, but that is also partially what makes this feature so frustrating, because I see the potential. I see all the really great material that they had here, and how if the people behind this movie had just taken a different approach, then it could have been a really good film. That squandered potential sours things a bit for me, but ultimately I did enjoy Kung Fu Panda 4, and I will give it a ghost rating of 6.5 out of 10. Check it out if you're a big fan of the series, but just know to not expect the same quality as the previous installments. If you like this video, then consider leaving a like and subscribing and checking out my other movie review videos, cause I'm pretty sure you would like those too. Don't forget, I'll hopefully be dropping my in-depth look into the major mistakes of this movie and how to learn from them video soon, so stay tuned for that, and I'll catch you all on the next one. Have a great day.